Good. Thank you very much for us providing our materials about the mighty Spence. And then it, I was just from FIP last month, and then to know about the progress of mighty Spence. And then we've just reviewed the application of mighty Spence in Vietnam, as it also already Vietnamese as far as I know. So yeah, the researchers say that they use currently the 100 samples of methylated into the Vietnamese setting, and that's why I'm thinking of whether it's also probably applicable to Indonesia, and also might be visible to us in the future. I've also talked this to my colleagues from Malaysia, from the one of the private universities there in Malaysia, and then they promised me to provide the trial of mighty Spence, but luckily we have you now, so we are to listen from you about the mighty Spence, also how it's gonna be probably in the setting of Indonesia. I don't know whether how many Indonesians at this moment are using mighty Spence. Would be any?
Let me for you.
Because to the best of my knowledge, I've one of them using the mighty Spence.
One, two, three. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 universities.
I see.
I can send you a list of those that are in mighty Spence at the moment. There are 5 using, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 who have made queries. Oh, 4 who have made queries but aren't using it. So I can put you in touch with those people if you desire.
Great. It has been under the radar for these mighty Spence applications in our setting now. It's gonna be great. Okay, thank you very much for informing us about this one.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you so much. All right, so I wasn't quite sure where to pitch the vision. So I've given a little bit of a story about mighty Spence and about the organization and background, but I think maybe you also might want to see some of the functionality of mighty Spence, so you might squeeze in a little demonstration in there if we can. Share my screen and the presentation. Are you seeing my PowerPoint? Sorry, lady.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're on mute again, I think. Yeah, you're still on mute. I guess, can you just nod? Oh, no, I think your mic's not working. Are you hearing me okay? And are you seeing my PowerPoint slide?
Hello, Kate.
Hi.
You hear me? Yeah. My name is Kisnita. I'm a staff in here, Department of Pharmacy Practice. Your slide clearly.
Oh, thank you. I didn't want to start unless everyone can see what we're doing. Okay, so let's begin. again, I think maybe you might be interested in some of the functionality of my dispense, and I wasn't quite sure what I've actually done is I've given I'm going to give a little bit of a description of what we do and how we do it, and I'm also going to knowing that we have some students present as well. I've got some things to sort of think about aspect of how we do what we do, but we probably won't spend too much time on that. I may show some of the functionality, but I'll be led by you guys our presentation, and then we'll see where we go after that. So let's begin. Let's just okay. So what's the rationale for my dispense? I think it's going to be no surprise on this call that medication errors are a serious issue globally, incur a significant cost in terms of health and monetary. And essentially, pharmacists are the last line of defense in the fight against medication errors. It's a huge role globally, and we talk to pharmacists all over the world, and the pharmacists are pretty much the sometimes unacknowledged, sometimes heroes of the healthcare world. There's a lot of upon the shoulders of pharmacists, so we need to train our pharmacists highly professionally. And part of that training often is experiential training, and a lot of universities have where you have a physical space, a physical room to go into, and that's stocked with medications, or at least medication packaging, and students can practice dispensing skills of the pharmacist within that environment, and it's highly valid and very realistic. The problem with that approach is that often one of them, and if your pharmacy schools are like our something like 300 students per year in our pharmacy cohorts, to get so many students through a good resource, but difficult resource to expose everyone to for a long period of time. So 11 or 12 years ago, we decided to go down the route of maybe simulating pharmacy and having an online pharmacy that was accessible 24 hours a day anywhere you were in the world. And that's when my dispense was born. So it came from the experiential learning for our students, anytime, any place. So what is it? So my dispense is free. It's an online. We designed it to be a safe environment for students, so that practice their dispensing skills and the other skills of pharmacy. A lot of decision making, a lot of high order skills that pharmacists need are ordered in my dispense. One of the outcomes we hope is to reduce the error, facilitate practice where students can make mistakes in a safe environment, where if they do make a mistake, which is a very valuable learning experience, no one in the real world is harmed, and students can practice as many times as they like. So that's a rationale. What does my dispense actually constitute? What happens? Well, I think if time permits, we'll do a little demonstration of that. If you have, we'll think about that. But essentially, we have a number of components to this. Typically, what you're seeing on the screen now is encounter in a community pharmacy setting. So you can, the students have access to a community pharmacy dispensation where they can do data entry and search for medications and things. We also have sources of medicine. So we have shelves and a refrigerator and and we have prescription medicines. And then we also have front of shop within the simulation with self-care or over-the-counter. So that's one element of the simulation. Probably put that slide in the wrong place. And we also have a prescription isn't available, but you use to recommend medications to a patient. And that can be a fairly simple case, or it could be quite, and you might want to rely on some patient records that you might access to make decisions. But essentially, you're making decisions from a very broad pharmaceutical products that might be applicable to whatever condition the patient, and that can be quite a complex task. So self-care encounters are something we also support. And then we have a hospital aspect where you can be playing the role of a hospital pharmacist, and your tasks can be patient-facing, but they can also encounters with other members, other healthcare professionals, other members of staff. And example here, and we can also expose our students to own queries that can be quite complex. This one looks like it's looks like that's a rate calculation for an IV medication. You can also be interrupted while you're doing this, and we can have people interruptions, and you can also respond to those things. So you people appearing in front of you, you can have telephone interruptions, and you can have routine. Another type of exercise that we support in my dispense called the validation exercise, where you play the role of a senior pharmacist and you check the work of someone else. So you might be checking a prescription or the label and the product that they've selected. Alina, are you saying something, or some at the moment? No, sorry.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Can you just repeat it again? Because I think there's a trouble with my. Can you say it again?
Oh, it's just I saw you talking, and I thought you were saying something.
No, just yeah, that's okay. Okay,
Oh,
I'll
okay.
just talk with the student.
Oh,
that's
sorry.
all right. Go on.
Just wasn't hearing you. That's all. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, the validation exercises is kind of the others where you're dealing with patients. It's kind of that aspect of the pharmacist role where you really have to have, and you really have to be able to spot errors, particularly in the work of someone else. I'll show you an example of a validation exercise maybe later. But those are the sort of broad that we have, use cases that we have for my dispense. And then more recently, in my dispense version 7, we introduced another aspect to the hospital the role, and that was the EHR simulation. So we built a virtual electronic health record system within my dispense, and these are some screenshots. So the workflow typically isn't patient-facing. It's you're working on a computer and you're working within the electronic record system. Typically, you might be doing tasks like this one shows an order verification task. An order comes in from a prescriber, and the role of the pharmacist in this task is to validate that order and say whether it's safe to the department to be administered to the patient. And we have the full information that you would see within an electronic health record system. So, laboratory results, vital signs, admission notes, medical professional notes, all kinds of other things. I mean, allergy records, all of those things. So you've got a very rich source of information to make your decisions. Is it safe to validate this medication order? We also have what we call professional communication, where it's kind of like a chat board. You have input from different health professionals. So you've got a here and a doctor here, and over here you can make some questions, so you can and get replies. So this was about the weight of the patient in order to be able to make a dose. So there's it's more than just community pharmacy dispensing. It's very much more than that now. So just to give you some background as to dispenses and who uses it and how we do what we do. Typically, probably a few weeks out of date, probably a couple of months out of date, and things change very rapidly in the MyDispense world. But you can see that by far the largest user base we have is in the United States. I think we probably have almost every school in the United States using MyDispense now. Some tertiary colleges and some school systems using MyDispense as well. So very broadly used in the US. Very good representation in the Philippines, United Kingdom, obviously Australia, and 30 here. But you can see that we have many instances of MyDispense, over 240 schools of pharmacy globally using. And it's an important note to make that I think that it's important to say that we can customize for your region. So we can and have customized MyDispense for the United Kingdom, and we've also customized and Turkey and Sweden and a couple of others that elude my memory. So that means that we can reflect practice in your region and have the prescriptions and the medications and the practice that adheres to your regulatory, and we can reflect all of that in MyDispense. And typically that takes a few months to do, but once we've done that, that could be rolled out to every school of pharmacy within your, and we strongly recommend collaboration with other schools of pharmacy to get that done, because one of the tasks that we need to do, for example, is to get images medications that you use in your region, both over-the-counter and medications. And so collaboration is the key there. It makes that task. We can talk about that another time. The growth of MyDispense has been unbelievable since we started in 2011, and we designed and built it for Monash University, and then we took it to a couple of conferences, and we took it to, I think, AACP in the USA, and some colleagues in the USA expressed their interest in MyDispense, and we started to share with, I think, University of Connecticut and UCSF in the first instance, and then they took it to a couple of conferences, and then the word went round, and it just grew very steadily from that point in time until about late 2019, early 2020, when COVID became a thing. And you can see the incredible rate of growth that we had in MyDispense instances during the COVID period, when a lot of universities were switching their educational provision to online in order to try and combat some of the limitations imposed upon us by COVID. And it's gratifying to know that most of the universities who took on MyDispense during that period still use it, still find value in it, even though a lot of their students have returned to campus. They still find value in MyDispense, so that's very gratifying. Typically, what are the most used features? It's no surprise to see that dispense activities are the most commonly used, but we've got validation and OTC, and down here you probably can't see EHR on this graph. It's probably a little bit out of date, but EHR is growing. There's also an activity type called a scenario, within which you can combine things like dispense and validation and OTC activities into one big interaction. And the total for all of those activity types globally is now well over 2 million exercises completed. And that's a lot of practice. That's a lot of student practice. So that makes us very happy to see that MyDispense is so heavily used around the world. You can see that we are truly global. There are areas of the world that there are not many areas of the world actually that where MyDispense doesn't have some form of representation. Sometimes we think we might target certain areas and say you might want to benefit from the use of this software, but we often find ourselves too busy to actually do that. We're a very small team, and the growth seems to be fairly steady anyway. So but in the future we may do that, but at the moment there's probably no need. But we've got very good global representation. And you have to remember that MyDispense is free of charge, so we make absolutely no money from sharing MyDispense. In fact, it's a not insignificant cost to Monash University in order to share and host it for schools of pharmacy, but we think it's the right thing to do, and we'll always continue to do that. Just recently, we were very happy to receive a couple of awards. We got the in Australia, the Australian Financial Review overall award for higher education, and we also took the Teaching and Learning Excellence category, which we were very, very proud of that, because that publication has no alliance whatsoever to pharmacy, or pharmacy in particular, and they saw a lot of merit in MyDispense. And then more recently, we took the inaugural Pharmaceutical Education Organizational Award from FIP, and that was awarded to our dean at the FIP Congress in Brisbane, and he was very happy to receive that, and we were very proud and grateful for that award. Now, when we create MyDispense and when we work on MyDispense in terms of the future direction and where we're going in our next versions of the software and what we think about supporting next, we always have to bear in mind the principles that we adhere to. And this hopefully will help to inform you of why sometimes we're a little bit reluctant to embrace some new technologies. For example, some people say to us, why don't we use a lot of artificial intelligence in MyDispense? Why don't we use machine learning, AI? And we are looking at those technologies, but the embodiment of any technology or any educational aspect into the simulation needs to conform with our principles. And one of our biggest principles is that we need MyDispense always to remain free of charge. And anything that we add to MyDispense needs to allow us to continue to do that. So, for example, with artificial intelligence, there may be things that we could build into the software, but they would incur a charge, and we don't want to pass on that charge to our end users. So we've got to find a way of using new methods and new technologies that fit with our principles. And so we always want MyDispense to be free. Our other principles are very much about collaboration and sharing. And we've seen some incredible results around the world where MyDispense has provided a platform for people in different institutions, different schools of pharmacy, to collaborate with each other to generate content or to write educational research papers or any number of other things. And it's very gratifying to see collaboration happening with our platform as the basis for that. We very much encourage communities of practice to develop, and we have a USA-based community of practice that's run by a couple of our champions in the USA, and we were very strongly looking at an Asia community of practice that we hope will be set up then very soon. And we'll use the MyDispense website as a platform for that. We always foster scholarship in pharmacy education broadly and specifically in the simulation. And we have many papers that have MyDispense or simulation as their focus that we have been part of or party to. And again, that's great to see. Anything that we add to MyDispense is never just added ad hoc or as an idea that we have as a development team. Additions to the simulation are always done in collaboration with the pharmacy education community, whether that's from Monash University or requests that we get for features anywhere else in the world. And we are very much led by our global user group now. It's really great to get ideas from everywhere in the world and to think about how we can embody those ideas and incorporate them into the software that in such a way that they're of use to everyone that uses MyDispense. As I mentioned earlier, we're a very small team. There are only 2 of us really in the core team, with a couple of other people who help us out on a less full-time basis. So a very small team, but thankfully we still manage to remain highly responsive. So if you have any issues or faults, if you find any bugs in the software or you have any problems operating the software, people tell us that we're still highly responsive, and we aim to get back to you within 24 hours within the working week, should you have any issues with MyDispense. And again, just to reiterate, we only adopt new technologies if they fit within our principles and they are of educational benefit. We have a whole number of principles. Look, these are design principles, and I don't want to labor this fact, but it's just to show you that we think very, very carefully before we add features to MyDispense. For example, I'll talk a little bit in a little while about engineered fidelity versus psychological fidelity, but that was one of our first design principles was, how do we do this? How do we simulate a pharmacy, and how do we simulate the world of a pharmacist? And do we go down the game route and have a full 3-dimensional environment where you can walk around and feel like you're immersed in a place? Or is that a barrier? And we decided that if we want to share it very, very broadly, that might be a bit of a barrier, that particularly at the time when we first designed MyDispense, online gaming was not as mature as it is now, and there were some barriers to adoption. Things like you may need to download a plugin, or bandwidth could be an issue, or even just using the environment, becoming familiar with that 3-dimensional environment might form a barrier to uptake and might make it just, well, that one thing that made it too hard to implement MyDispense. So we went down a different route. We went down a low fidelity route, where we don't have too many fancy graphics. But as I'll explain later, that doesn't mean it's any less valid or any less real, hopefully, to our students. Some of our other principles are we want it to be accessible 24/7. We want it to be very accessible in terms of technology barriers. So we made the simulation as lightweight as possible, so that all you really need, hopefully, is an up-to-date browser and an internet connection, and you should be able to access and use MyDispense. And certainly we've had feedback from students who have lived in, highly rural areas in the Philippines, for example, who can still use MyDispense quite effectively. We want it to be flexible. It's based on sound pedagogical principles. I won't label that fact. We thought long and hard about the educational design before we ever wrote a line of code. We want MyDispense always to be relevant, so we're continually updating the software. And one thing, we're always horizon scanning, for example, and we're looking at where the pharmacy profession is going globally. So we want to support pharmacy in its highest tech levels, e-pharmacy on every level. And we also want to continue to support pharmacy education where, for example, electronic medicine doesn't have a firm foothold yet, and paper-based prescriptions, for example, are still very much the norm. And that's very much the norm in Australia. Every time I go to a pharmacy, I take a paper prescription with me, and e-scripts don't have that. They're growing in use, but don't have the majority foothold that paper has at the moment. So relevancy is important to us. As I said earlier, we want it to be a safe environment where students can make mistakes and where they can practice as many times as they like. And that's something that we find students typically do. Most of the exercises that our students do, particularly in the USA, because we have data on that, they do more than once. They will do an exercise more than once in order to get mastery of that particular task. And that's good to see that they're not doing it just because they have to, but they're doing it because they want to be better. And that was a great thing to learn a couple of years ago, that when we got some data on that. We want the software to challenge students. So it's not just for beginners. We can certainly, the environment certainly allows you to have the very most novice students come in and begin to learn the role of the pharmacist from day one. But we hope and we think that we've got it right, that we have a system in which you can do that, but you can also challenge very expert pharmacists and indeed qualified pharmacists who may be doing some CPD. We know that my dispenser is used in that context as well. So all levels of user really is what we're aiming at. If you're a student and you're listening to this, you've seen my dispense, you will have seen probably about a quarter of it. What students see is the student view of my dispense, but what happens in the background is very much more than that. And the software is actually in an authoring environment that allows instructors to create content, to create cases, and to repurpose cases. We have a very, very strong administrative back end to my dispense that allows you to create content from the most basic to the most challenging. It's very important when you do work on an online simulation that you know if you've done it right or wrong. And so my dispense provides immediate feedback to students on their performance in an exercise or in a case. So there's one exception to that, and that is when students do an assessment. It's possible to switch off the immediate feedback for the assessment, and then students don't get their feedback until marking has been done. And some of that marking is done by the computer, and some of that marking is done by the instructor. Some of the more qualitative aspects still need to be marked by a person. And finally, it's very important to us that we built a system where content can be shared. So if you're creating a very rich experience for students to practice in, and you're giving them very realistic and challenging tasks to do, that can take time. It takes time to think about it. It takes time to build it. And so we've built my dispense to allow content to be shared, both between schools of pharmacy and also within your own instance of my dispense. So you might create a case that took you maybe 3 hours to create, and then you can copy that and then change it. And then you can certainly share that case with other schools of pharmacy, and our website has a space that allows you to do that. So as I mentioned before, we didn't go down the full 3D route. We wanted my dispense to be as realistic as possible, but also as accessible as possible. And so we took the route of what we call psychological fidelity. So to explain what that is, we have these terms: engineered fidelity and psychological fidelity. I guess engineered fidelity is something like when you're playing a fully immersive 3D game. Everything looks beautiful. You can walk around, and it's highly, highly, highly technically accomplished. But that comes at a cost. Well, and we also have, excuse me, psychological fidelity. And that means that within your mind, it feels like you're doing the tasks of a pharmacist, and the pressures and the decisions and the time and the task management that you need to do can be simulated in MyDispense without the full 3D immersive environment. Excuse me. So that's what we mean by psychological fidelity, and that is the route which we continue to take until the time where we can rethink that, and maybe online high fidelity, high engineered fidelity approach is something we can do. But we may never get to that point, because at the moment we've had no complaints about the realism of MyDispense. So just a reminder that MyDispense is free, and it will always be free. And that's great, because it means that if you're in a pharmacy school in a Russell Group University, Oxford, Cambridge, or an Ivy League university, or a university that has much fewer resources, you're going to get the same experience. It's the same for everyone, and that bar is the same for everyone, and we continue to strive for that. So how do we share it? Well, each institution, each school of pharmacy gets their own instance of MyDispense. There isn't a giant server somewhere that everybody logs into, and we split up by user account or something like that. That's not how it works. We have an individual server for every school of pharmacy. No one else can ever access your instance of MyDispense. And that's done for a number of reasons, but one of the primary reasons is data protection and privacy. No one else but you can access your instance. We acknowledge that it's hard to set up a server. It's a technical task to set up and to maintain a server. So we do that for you. We will host MyDispense for you. And we do that on a cloud-based service. We use Amazon Web Services to do that. And we can set up a server for you. And Amazon Web Services have servers all around the world in data centers all around the world. They have probably 4 or 5 in the USA, a number of them in Europe, a number of them in the Asia region. So we will find a data center that is closest to you, and that's where we will install MyDispense and where you'll access it from. And that has 2 benefits. It means that you're going to get low latency. You're not going to be waiting for things to respond in the browser. And also it makes it easier to adhere to the data protection or the data legislation in your area. So for example, in Europe, the data legislation is quite strict in terms of privacy, and also in terms of the right to ownership of your data. So hosting MyDispense in Europe for the European universities just works really well. If we host it for you, then you have minimal need for local IT support. In fact, your IT people probably only need to be involved at the very beginning. We need you to register a name so that your students can type something to access MyDispense. So, for example, mydispense.monash.edu is the link that our students use. Your students need to have a similar link for your university, and your IT team need to set up that link. And after that, they probably don't need to be involved again. Sometimes they get involved in terms of they have questions about the safety, security, and solidity of MyDispense from their perspective, and we often answer their questions. And we haven't come across a school of pharmacy or a university yet that hasn't said yes to how we run our systems. Although sometimes it takes a little while. So why do we do that? Why do we share? And it costs us. It's not an insignificant cost to pharmacy at Monash to host MyDispense. Well, the most immediate answer is it's the right thing to do. We can do that. We develop MyDispense. We thankfully have the resources to develop MyDispense and to continue to develop it. And so it seems almost selfish to keep that to ourselves. And it seems the right thing to do to share it. Another enormous benefit, not just to Monash, though we have seen benefit, is that collaborations and partnerships that would never have happened otherwise have happened. Not just between Monash and other schools, but between School A and School B. And we're very happy to see that happen, and also creating a culture of sharing. It's what we're all about really here at Monash and at Pharmacy at Monash, is that sharing and collaboration it just makes sense. And unless there's a reason not to do it, it's the right thing to do. And we've seen enormous benefits from 2, 3 or more universities through MyDispense sharing content and then going on to do other things. And it does our reputation no harm. As long as MyDispense is good and it's of value, then people think it's a good thing, and that makes us happy. So the reputational benefit is not insignificant for us at Monash. So what does that cost us? In terms of sharing, I was going to, because I thought this was going to be mostly students, I was going to have your students maybe think for a couple of minutes about what that might be, but I see that we've got a number of members of staff, and I've been talking for quite some time now, so I'm not going to hand over to that. The logistics might be just too hard to do, but it does beg the question: what does it cost us to share MyDispense? I'll just go over this quite quickly because it's quite interesting, really, in terms of our time, legal, technology, security, all of those things. So technology costs, it costs us dollars to host MyDispense on servers, and then it costs us time and therefore dollars to maintain those servers. So that's technology costs. Then we've got system administration, bug fixing, updates, adding new features, so development costs. Those are all people costs, that's time costs. Then we've got legal issues. We have to sometimes engage in contract negotiation with universities. Thankfully, not too many, because once the legal teams get involved, things slow down enormously. But sometimes that happens, and people need to have that security of a contract signed. Now, we have terms and conditions, and we're happy to share them with you, and we're happy to sign up to those terms and conditions with you, but they're not mandatory. If you're happy to work on a less formal basis, and many schools of pharmacy do, then we're happy as well. But the big issue here is that legal questions take time, and I'm not qualified to answer legal questions. I have to pass it to our legal department because I'm a very minor representative of Monash University, and I would hate to do something that would compromise us in a legal framework. So I always have to confer with our legal people if someone needs to question a contract. So again, that takes time. Security, we always have to have one eye on security. So we've got privacy of our user data and your data, and things like GDPR in Europe, comes along, and we have to be aware of legislation in different parts of the world in order to make it right in different locales. And then we've got the global context and the time it takes to, for example, make MyDispense relevant in your region to customize the software. And then language is a possibility, so we can translate MyDispense into your local language. Again, that takes time. The medications and the patient avatars, although we are working on patient avatars in our new version of MyDispense, where we should be able to cover pretty much all regions, patients from all regions. It's a global world. I mean, Australia in particular is a very multicultural nation. Most nations are growing in that direction. So we need to have patient avatars that reflect that population, and we're working on that. So a quick scan at what we're going to be doing in the future. We are currently on MyDispense 7.1, I think, or 7.2, I can't remember. We're working on 2 aspects. There'll be one more version 7 subversion that will be released next year, and that will introduce a medication administration record to the hospital element. The other thing that we're working on, which will be in MyDispense version 8, which will happen towards the end of next year, is remove the barriers between the prescription and the OTC tasks that we have. Now, if you haven't used MyDispense before, you probably won't know what that means, but at the moment you can have a prescription task or you can have an OTC task. We're removing that artificial barrier so that you just have a patient-facing task. And that will mean that just like a real pharmacy, when a patient walks up to you, you don't really know what they want. They might just want to ask a question, or they might want a prescription to be filled and also an OTC, and they might want you to have a look at a rash, or you might need to do a little bit of diagnosis and advice. Who knows? So we'll have just one patient-facing task to try and improve that realism. In the future, we're going to add support in version 8. This will probably come towards the end of next year and into 2025. And that is support for independent prescribing and independent supply of medications. And also that there'll be a diagnosis element in that. That's largely driven by the United Kingdom at the moment. They have a requirement to train their students up to master's level. And their curriculum from next year needs to include independent prescribing. So we're going to include that. And hopefully that's of value in other places around the world as well. So that's where we're going in the future. There are many other things that we're considering, but that's the broad direction that we're going. And that's pretty much it for my little presentation at the moment. I'm very open to questions. And if anyone would like to see any more, we might be able to demonstrate something as well. I haven't been keeping up with the chat, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Yeah. All right.
And have a quick
Thank
look
you.
at the chat.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Okay.
Kate, for sharing the presentations. I think while we are waiting for the questions, do you have any for demonstrations, so the students is very curious about what's the MyDispense looks like
Yeah,
from the
I can
students.
do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
Right.
Okay, let's have a quick look. I just want to get organized first, and let me have a think. I'll close that one down, and I will. I'm just going to do this. Okay, yeah, I can use this one. Let's have a look. Okay, can you see the screen with the lady on it?
Yep, yep.
Cool. Okay, I'm going to take you through now. This is a community pharmacy exercise that is a dispensing exercise. This is based on, I believe it could be US or it could be Australia. Let me have a look. Yeah, I think this is a US script. So this is the USA context. So it's just a test system that I'm using at the moment. And this has some of our, the reason I'm using it is it has some of our hospital functionality as well. So I'll show you this community pharmacy thing. So just so we can get some some familiarization really with the software. This is what it looks like. When you log in as a student, you'll see something like this. You'll see a dashboard, and then you will select an exercise, and then you'll go into the exercise. And when you go into the exercise, the screen will look like this. It'll have this little introduction screen on, and this sets the context for the task. So it's on this one, it says the patient would like you to have a new medication and some instruction on how to use the patches. It could say anything. It could give you a lot of information in there, a lot of context, or it could just say, you know, you're working in a busy community pharmacy, respond to the customers as they arrive, sort of thing. And you click on OK, and you go into the task. And you can always get that back by clicking on that little information screen there, little information button. We have a little timer in there. This is telling me that 2 minutes have elapsed since I started this exercise. If this was an exam, it would be counting down how much time I have left, so that you can see that you've got a little timer there. Here we have the patient. Now, if you click on the patient, it opens up a panel, and we have the patient-facing aspects here. We've got what we call fact-finding. This is a little bit like history-taking, but something you need to know is that we don't try to teach communication skills in MyDispense. That it's very hard to teach communication skills using a computer, and we continually look into this space to see if we can improve this, and we may make some improvements in the future, but at the moment we keep it simple. We have to adhere to those principles of keeping it free and keeping it accessible. So we have this thing called fact-finding, which is how you get information from the patient without it being a full communication thing. So we can discuss topics, for example, with the patient. So we can say, you know, and you can see that it builds up a dialogue between the pharmacist and the patient. So, you know, you can ask questions. If this was a male patient, for example, and you asked about breastfeeding, that would be inappropriate. Now, what students commonly do, and what I would do if I was seeing this for the first time, is I would just click all the questions, because that would get me the most information. But actually, should I be asking a man if he's breastfeeding? Of course I shouldn't. So we do say in the feedback, well, actually, that wasn't an appropriate question. So it's not right to ask all of the questions. You should be thinking about the questions that you need to ask the patient. So think, you know, important questions, you know, other medications and symptoms, and it depends what the medication is, of course, but, you know, are they smoking, the weight might be a factor, particularly with pediatric patients and things like that. So that's fact finding. We have patient questions where the patient can ask you a question. So that's something that they can do. We have a space for counseling where I can type in counseling points and counsel the patient and tell them how to take their medications. We also have this thing called attachments. Now, there aren't any attachments in this exercise, but attachments are things that allow you to give more information that might not be available broadly in MyDispense. So things like laboratory results, or a doctor's letter, or a discharge letter from hospital, that kind of thing. If you can put it into a PDF file format, then you can attach it to an exercise in MyDispense and add it, and students would see it here under the attachments area. You can also attach images. So, for example, if you're in a self-care, an OTC scenario, a patient might come in and say, can you give me something for this rash? And then obviously you need a picture of the rash so you can have a look at it and recommend a medication or a treatment for that rash. So you can add pictures as well. Now, this panel also allows you to do the final handover of the medications to your patient. So we have a handover element as well, which is telling me here that there's nothing to hand over because we haven't done anything yet. But if I decided not to dispense, if I did decide that there was a reason that this wasn't a good idea, we have the do not dispense option. And if you decide not to dispense, then you need to give a reason for that. And there might be more than one reason. So you might click a number of reasons from this list. But you also you also need to justify why and I can see there's actually a little glitch in the software here. There's normally a little text panel here that allows me to type why I think it's a bad idea to dispense this medicine, but I'm just going to close that for now. So that's what happens when you click on the patient. When you click on the prescription, the script appears and disappears, and you can see that we've got our script here. We can make it smaller or larger depending on the screen size you've got available to you, so you can see it clearly. We also have a little flyout panel. I'm not sure if this is possible in your region, but in some areas, it's possible for pharmacists to change things on the script, things that they see that might be incorrect or inappropriate, and sign it off. So that's something that you can do using that flyout panel, but that's only if you can do it within your area. So we've got our script here. You can see all the elements of the script, and I can put it to one side here. Now, we've got this reference section here. So these are our reference books. If I click on that, this will take us to different reference sources, and this is customizable. So the references that you have available in your institution will be added here, the pharmaceutical references that your students have access to. And that just makes them easy and on hand to easily accessible. We have a telephone, so that should you need to contact the prescriber, you can do that. Often what you're going to get is this person is not available, because not all exercises have this facility. So if you're a student and you see, you know, something like the phone rings but there's no answer, it probably means there's going to be no source of information in that area. We have, critically, we have the computer screen. You're going to be doing a fair bit of work on the computer screen. And here we have the dispense software. So this is your community pharmacy dispense software. And we have two types of software here. We have our dispense software that you would use in a community setting, but we also have EHR software that you would use in a hospital. Now, we have no EHR activities here because we're in a community pharmacy. So I'm going to switch back to dispense software. I'm going to type the name of the patient, which is how I kind of unlock the rest of this. So let's see. If I just type AB and hit return, I can see all of the patients in the database whose name has AB in it. So if I want to go a little bit further and narrow that down a little bit, I can continue to do that. And I can see that I need to pick the right patient from this list. And so I think we've got two that seem similar. So I just need to be very careful which patient I select. And now I've got my patient information here. So to dispense this is a USA context that we're working in. I need to add the prescription date. I'm just going to work through this very, very quickly. I need to say who the prescriber is. So if I just type a few letters of their name, I can add the prescriber. The drug is a combi patch, so combi. Oh, luckily there's only one there, so that's an 5140 estradiol patch, so that's good. I can add that. And then the directions, well, the directions on the script say apply twice a week, I think that might be. So this is where I need to add the directions for the label. And you can see we're building up the dispensing label over here. So I should have said this right at the beginning. I am not a pharmacist. So if I write something that looks silly, forgive me. But I'll just say something like apply one patch. And then the counseling for this would be obviously important about where you put the patch, because patches can be tricky, I know. Apply one patch 2 times per week. I might say something like remove the old patch, that kind of thing. And I'm building up those directions here on my label. Excuse me. I'm going to put 0 refill. There are actually 4 refills on that, but we don't actually support refills. The quantity you must get 8 patches, and I'll put my initials there. I can also add a note to this. You know, maybe it's it might be the first time this patient's had this medication. I can't type. I'm not a pharmacist and I can't type. We can actually add a note there as well. And we can have pre-existing notes. So when you create the exercise, we can have patient notes already in there. And then this section here allows for dispensing records. So it could be that when the instructor created this exercise, they built in a whole lot of previous medications for this patient. So it could be, I mean, they might have been taking maybe a patch, or they might have been taking something else, or they continue to take something else that has either maybe an adverse effect or an interaction with the medication on the prescription. So this medication history, dispensing history, could be important. Now, at the moment, it's blank, so you're kind of assuming that they're not on any other medications. So you can then go to print the label. You can compare the label with the script, all of those things, and we can move on. So the next stage typically would be to go from, you know, the dispensary to the back room, and where would I find that combi patch? I'm not quite sure if that would be in the fridge or on the shelves, but I'll have a look around. So we've got a safe, and we've got our fridge, and we've got some shelves. And if I click on the shelves, you can see that we have all of our drugs there, and they're organized by brand name alphabetically. So I've got A drugs and B drugs and C drugs. So I've got C drugs here, and I need to find combi patch. So I'll have a look. I always struggle with this. CM combi patch. Maybe not there. Would it be in the fridge? I don't know. It is. See, I'm learning something. So if I click on the thing that I'm looking for, I can see it, but I can also see other drugs. So I know that this has got nothing to do with this, but it's just to show you that I could actually have a number of items there till I'm absolutely sure that the thing that I want is this one, and I can just then close down those. And when I can also see that it's a pack of 8, and I can see the expiry date as well on that. And expiry date is something obviously that's important. So I can add that to my inventory. When that drug comes down here to my inventory, and if I click on that, you can see I've made one label and I've got one medication in my inventory down here. So going back to the dispensary, you can now see this middle bit that I didn't click on before, which is our benchtop. It now has a medicine in the basket. And if I click on that, this brings us to what we call the benchtop screen. And we've got a barcode scanner here. I can click on the medication and the scanner, and then click on the product. And this tells me that the item that I put on the label is the same as the item that I selected from the shelf. So that's a good thing. It's a safety check. And then I can click on the label and carry it over to the product that I've selected, and that attaches the label to the product. We can also have another step in there that is actually attaching the label to the product, and we do that in Australia. They don't tend to do it so much in the US, but that's a thing that we can support. And then we've got our cautionary advisory labels here. So I don't know if there's anything that pertains to a patch here. There aren't so many. Well, let's just pretend that that was something that would go with this, and we can add our ancillary label here. And that's pretty much it for the kind of benchtop. There is something else we can do, and that is if you have medications that come in a bulk container, and then you count them out. So you might count out 20 pills, for example, or 20 capsules, and put them into a dispensing container. We can support that activity as well. It's not so common in Australia, but it's very common in the US, so we can do that. And then we can come back to our patient. And now if I click on handover, you can see that we now have something to hand over. We've got the combi patch and we've got the label. I could do some counseling at this point, you know, counseling about patches. Oh man, you can never type when people are watching. So that you can do a lot of counseling points there. And I'm just going to say counseling about patches and click on cancel. And she'll say, thank you, I've got that. And then I can finish the exercise and then I get my feedback. So this is where I was saying we get immediate feedback. Now, I've been messing around in this exercise, so the feedback might not look great, but and it's also a test server, so please be aware that this might not look as beautiful as it could. If the icon for the exercise would have been probably blue before, but now it's green, and the green ones we can click on and we get our feedback. So we can see our patient here, we can review the prescription if you want to, and we can review our feedback. So it says here that dispensing the script was the correct decision. It was safe to dispense. And now we've got essentially two columns ongoing here, where we've got a column which is what I did, and this is the sort of ideal situation that we've got here. So this is my label, and this is essentially the ideal label. But bear in mind, this was probably created by myself or by my colleague Keenan. So in terms of the pharmacy, it's probably not very valid. But it's just to show you what we can do. So anything that's in green or red has been marked by the computer. So I can see I got all of these things right, but actually there were 4 repeats, but I said 0 repeats. So I got that bit wrong. I got the product right. All of those things were right. I added an ancillary label, but I knew I was doing that wrong, and it said no, ancillary labels were required. We didn't have to put in, there wasn't a requirement in this exercise for patient notes, but there might have been. So that's where I typed first time for this patient. And then we've got the counseling notes. So this is what I wrote, but actually this is what we got. So counseling notes are really generic counseling notes that say this is how you should have counseled your patient. And then I've got fact finding. We've got, I inquired about age and alcohol consumption and allergies, and we got a note from our tutor to say that allergies was important. Now, this depends very much upon the context of the exercise. It could be that it's really important to ask about pregnancy or breastfeeding because of the nature of the medication with a female patient, or it could be absolutely wrong to ask about breastfeeding, and you will get that feedback here to say what your fact finding was like. So that's basically what what feedback looks like. I can export that feedback to a PDF and keep it in my records as a student, or I can reset the exercise and do it again. And you see the icons turn blue, and I can start that exercise again. Okay, I'm going to stop talking now.
All right. Yeah,
I'll stop sharing my screen as well.
That's all right. Thank you so much, Kate.
No problem.
So I just like invite either any questions from students or from the lecturer here. So feel free to ask. I think it's like because like we have students from the 3rd and the 4th year at the moment who joined, like, and some of them probably is already left because they have another lectures
that's
running
fine.
at the moment.
That's all good.
But this is a very interesting for us to know, because we do have some practicum from students as well, but we haven't tried for my dispense. And at the beginning you say that there are like 5 universities that's currently running using my dispense in Indonesia, right? I mean, like after this, like if you would mind, like just share it with me or with us, and then we will try to contact that university and see, because you mentioned that it is possible to make it as a custom as possible, depends on our regions, is it, for in my dispense. So probably it's good to know that the student can also learn from this. Is there any questions probably from Bu Hani or Bu Geta or students? Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. So.
Yeah, Bu Gesnita, do you want to?
Can you hear my voice?
Yep.
Just about, yeah, it's very faint for me, so you might have to repeat it a little bit.
Yeah, Bu Gesnita probably want to ask questions.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Case, about my dispense. Very interesting, and I think for students in their age now, it is a challenging and attractive method for doing the practice, and they can do, as you said, as many as possible to do practice. I would like to ask about for the first what do you call that, the first preparation that the university need to do. Maybe you can share like about, first of all, I would like to ask about the team first. So what are the team member that we need to prepare for using?
That's a great question. I think you need pharmacy educators. You need the people who are on the front line teaching your students. And it doesn't just have to be pharmacy practice, because I think there are applications of MyDispense that fall also into legal and ethical frameworks as well. But whoever's teaching your students and whatever they want to use MyDispense for, they're key stakeholders. I think you need to know what your educational outcomes are going to be. But essentially, teaching staff, and I think you need to have at least one administrator on board. Do you have someone who, for example, enrolls students into courses on the learning management system, that kind of thing? Because you need one administrator to do the day-to-day running of MyDispense. That's it. That's to create the exercises and tutorials and the units of the structure that reflects your teaching. Typically, that only happens maybe once or twice a year when you're rolling over from one year to the next. And then you need people to put the content in, and that's often your pharmacy instructors, but you might get sometimes we use practitioners who could do some teaching as well, to add cases, because they're very much current with up-to-date practice and things that are in and out of the legislative framework. So you need people to design the educational aspect. You need someone to do the day-to-day running of it, but that's a very small task. And you need someone or people to add the content. And other than that, in terms of setting up the project to get MyDispense into your institution, as I said earlier, you need your IT people, but only right at the very beginning to set up the domain name, and then we can do the rest of the work after that. If they get involved to the extent where they're asking questions about security and contracts, that can take a little longer, but we haven't come across any that we couldn't do yet. So it's not a barrier really at all. It normally takes, it depends on the level of customization. Could I ask a question? In your region, do you use products from other regions, such as the USA or maybe Australia, or are your products very much kind of within the region? Are they Indonesian products?
Oh, well, the majority of our product is only coming from the pharmaceutical industry in Indonesia. So it's very rare for us or for doctors to prescribe medication that is not listed, because we do have some, we call it like the national formularium or the list that is only available in Indonesia.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, then so that tells me that we need to do the step where we need to acquire the images of those medications, because you need it to be as real as possible, and students need to see the packaging that they would see in the pharmacy. So the biggest single task is actually photographing those
all of the medications,
all the medication images. But so you need someone to do that, but it doesn't really need to be a photographer. If you've got access to, if you know someone who works in, say, a community pharmacy who can do this, you can take those photographs on a mobile phone. That's easily good enough quality, and we can send you a guide on how to take those photographs.
Okay.
And then we will, that takes a little bit of time, but it takes a lot longer to process the images to go into My Dispense. And so we will do that for you. If you can, say you decide that you need 500, and I would say 500 would be the minimum, 500 medications, say prescription meds, to go into your version. And that's a regional version, not just your version, but across the region. I would say 500 medicines would be the minimum. Get those photographs, and typically we ask you to photograph every side. Yeah. So the front, the back, and the sides. And that's particularly important for over-the-counter medications where you've got directions and dosage and things on the packaging. And then say you would put those images into a Google Drive, we will download them, and I'll get someone to do the image processing and add them to My Dispense for you. So the task for you really is just photographing the images, photographing the packaging. So it's not too bad. And you can do that in batches if you like. Other than that, we need to know what your prescriptions look like, how many you have. Are there special things on there like reference numbers that we need to be aware of? So we need to compare them with things we've done in the past. So you need to send us samples of prescriptions, any other forms and things like if you want to support hospital discharge forms, for example, I don't know. We need samples of all of those things so that we can code them into My Dispense. Carry on.
For the cases or for the scenario, is it like is also coming from us as well, or we can just like adopt the one that is already built or integrated in the My Dispense system at the moment?
Good question. Both. The answer is both. Your instance will come with some cases already in there. Obviously, you're going to have to modify them slightly. But at least the thinking and the preparation work and the bare bones of the cases there already. So that will make life easier. And also you'll be adding your own content because there'll be some content that you're missing that just, it doesn't come with the application itself. Also on our website, we have probably at the moment about 200 to 300 cases. So you can have a look at the website. You might find a case that is similar to one that you want to use. You can download that and import it and then modify it.
And in Monash, I can't remember, is it like for My Dispense here, is it like applied to in what year students, or is it like is almost in every subject, or is just like a one particular subject or two particular subject and is running in for each year, or is just like not all of the students getting exposure with My Dispense?
It's pretty much across the board. Way back 10 years ago, it was mostly our level 1 students who used My Dispense. But now it's very much more embedded in the curriculum. So it was in the early days, it was very much about pharmacy practice. Now it's much more than that. And we even use it in extemporaneous workshops where students use My Dispense to prepare a label and do the preliminary work. And then someone actually prints that label off. We don't support printing in My Dispense, but it's possible to save the label as a PDF, print it out, and then have the students attach the label to the extemporaneous product that they've prepared.
Also, there are other settings as well. So it's not only like for dispense medication that is already there in, available on the market. There's also the hospital setting, right? Is there any like My Dispense has been like in the industrial setting as well? Or
no, we don't have anything that looks at sort of the industrial setting. It's very much pharmacist centric. But we're finding that the EHR element is opening up a lot of avenues for us, and people other than pharmacists are getting interested in MyDispense because we've built the simulated EHR system.
Yeah, and because if we adopt this one, like, is it like this? It means like we need also to provide like a computer lab or something where the students can working from the lab university, or they can just working from their own laptop.
Both. If you have a lab, then by all means use it. At Monash, we have a bring your own device policy, so our students have their own devices, and that works. So we transitioned from lab-based to bring your own device a few years ago, and it was seamless. There was no issue there. I will say that it doesn't work particularly well on a mobile phone. It is just there's too much information on the screen, and it doesn't adapt well to a mobile phone. We have had people use it on a tablet, but I wouldn't really recommend a tablet, but it can be done.
Okay, so just like you said that because it can be accessible especially for those who get like in the rural or remote area, but the students can work also from their own laptop using MyDispense.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's very much designed for students to access it from wherever they are, at home or wherever.
Okay. So is there any question from students? Because like we've been talking too much, like it's almost time. Like, do we have a question from students, or do Geta or Muhani probably have questions?
We need to give the opportunity for the students. I think maybe Virus, you want to ask question, Virus, or
I think this is like a new exposure to students. Any students? I saw that some students here probably wants to. Okay, Lukman, raise hand. Go on, Lukman.
Good morning, Dr. Keith. My name is Lukman, and I'm from third year student.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, so my question is, you mentioned at the early of your presentation, this MyDispense can reduce error during dispensing, right? So my question is, how significant can this simulator reduce error during dispensing? Do you have any comparison data for that, or it just because of this software can make student easier to dispense the medicine or something like that?
That's a great question. Yeah, I didn't actually touch on it when I did that little demonstration, but I think what we saw was about maybe 1% of MyDispense. I could, and have done in the past, I could literally talk for hours about this. But it was a great question. Yes, absolutely. So what you saw was very much the most basic kind of exercise type. It was very, very straightforward. But you can have exercises in which, say, a dispensing exercise, it could be that there's an error. Let's see, maybe the directions constitute a dose error. And it may be that combined with medications that the patient's already taking, it constitutes an overdose, and therefore you need to reject and take action against that. That kind of thing is perfectly possible. It's possible to introduce errors on the prescription itself. For example, you could remove the prescriber's signature, and everything could look right, but then you realize there's no signature, or the date's wrong, or there's a technical issue with the script. So there are many errors that you can introduce to all of the exercise types that allow you to have some really challenging scenarios. And the other thing you can do is you can link them together in what we call a scenario. So you could have, you could maybe have, say, an hour, like an hour in the life of a pharmacist. And in that time, you could present students with, say, 5 dispensing tasks, 3 OTC tasks, 3 validation tasks. Someone comes in to ask a question, the telephone rings, it interrupts you while you're doing something, And that's all about your concentration and your task management and your time management as well. And errors could be introduced there, you know. So there are lots of ways that you can create a situation where there potentially could be an error that needs to be addressed.
Okay, Doctor. So my next question is, since dispensing, one of the dispensing part is we need to provide the information regarding the medicine, right? Such as the side effect and then the interaction. So is this software have the information for that?
Or I didn't quite get what you meant by recording what?
Regarding the information of the medicine itself, such as the side effect or
Oh, I
interaction
see.
of the medicine. Yeah.
As in like a pharmaceutical reference, you mean? Yeah, obviously we don't include that in my dispense because that's proprietary. I don't know what resources you have in your university, but I'm sure you'll have pharmaceutical resources that you can link to. We can link to those resources from within the software, within the references panel that I showed you. So a little panel pops up, you just click on the link and it will take you to your pharmaceutical resource. And also, you know, you can just open up another tab and link to something else if you like as well.
Okay, so what you can say that whenever information regarding the medicine, including the side effect, we can always link with the references, right? Because we saw
absolutely, yeah.
There's a feature about the references, and then we can add any references that we are using.
That's correct. Yeah.
And is there any questions, Lukman, or that all answer your question?
Yeah, so far no question. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Okay, so is there any questions from the students? I think they are very curious. Is it like what's easier, like just instead of speaking directly with the patients? I mean, like,
yeah.
Because we saw because we do have some practice that where the students need to talk with a patient, like we call it like simulated patients, and sometimes students like it's very hard to communicate with patient. But this, again, like this is for the computer before, like you show us like what kind of information that we need to get from the patients before we dispense the medication. So the students must know, like, is this females patients? Do we need to ask like about breastfeeding or pregnancy conditions? And that the things are like, but I was curious, like if the students like click that the information that should not be asked to the patients, will they get a mark reduced or is just I
Good
mean,
question.
like this is I mean, like if imagine like this is an exams conditions.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So you very rightly have identified that there are two modes for my dispense. It can operate in practice mode, which is kind of the generic mode, where the feedback that you get doesn't have a mark.
Okay.
The feedback is all qualitative feedback.
Okay.
But we also have an assessment mode where you can run an exam, and obviously students need to be in control, or it could be an open exam as well, where when the student submits the exam, they don't see their feedback, and then it goes to you to mark it. And then you can decide to mark them down if they ask an inappropriate question or whatever mistake. You set the assessment criteria, essentially. There are so many facets to this. It would take, I'm happy to run tutorial sessions if you want to learn more about this, but you can absolutely mark them down for those things.
Yeah, okay, well, that's a good thing to know, because like when the students can communicate like directly with the patient, we can just mark them straight away, right? Okay, so you shouldn't ask this question or you should ask the question, but in the computer, like they can like click every information they just like and decide. So that's why. So at the end, like the teacher itself needs to mark and then mark and then assign, like give a sign like whether the student's doing correctly or not, right?
Yeah, a good point as well that you made is about confidence. And one of our outcomes right at the very beginning was we aimed to increase student confidence going into placements, for example. And the feedback that we got after the first year, way back 10 years ago, was that students felt very much more comfortable going into a placement situation where they'd had some time to practice online and they knew what to expect. Obviously, it's a new environment for them and it's still a little bit intimidating, but they felt that little bit better prepared for using My Dispense.
I think it's not, because like when using My Dispense, like they can also like at least expose with some medication, or like, you know, they getting prepared like what you need to do when they are seeing before they're seeing the real patients.
Absolutely, and particularly in the over-the-counter context, product knowledge is really important. And so it's a great vehicle for familiarizing students with the self-care products that are available, and they can see them before they ever get into the working in a pharmacy.
All right. So, and this is just like because of the time, but I think still, if there's students, is there any questions from the students before we ending the sessions? No? Okay, probably they just like when curious, they're just afraid we will adopt this system, but I'm very interested because I think this is like it's a good thing that there's already some universities in Indonesia that is implemented this system. So we will try to touch with them and then see if is it possible for us also to adopt this My Dispense in our curriculum as well. Bu Gesnita, is there anything else that you want to add?
No, I think that's enough for now.
We will be sure be in touch by email, Kate, because and then because we will ask because not all the students can join today, but we have recorded this system, and we will ask the students need to see the recording and to see there are some questionnaires that we want to ask their opinion about My Dispense, and when we want to put it into curriculum. So we'll be keep in touch by email.
Sounds good. Okay.
All right. So I think that because it's the time, and I know it's already in the afternoon, like at around 4 p.m. Is it almost 4 p.m., right?
3:30-ish,
3:30. All right. Okay. So thank you so much, Kate, and also some chat here from Kenan. Thank you so much for giving us a share experience from Monash University regarding My Dispense. I really appreciate it for your time, Kate. And even in the short notice, and I know that you're leaving, but thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and we'll be in touch by email. And thank you also for the students who already joined until the end of the sessions. Thank you so much, Kate. Have a great day. I will be in touch by email. So
thank you, and see you soon.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Oh, dia di situ. Oh, dia di sini.